Yep. Okay. So we start for the opening prayer and acknowledgement. If you could all stand, please. Lord, we ask that you guide us in our decision making, protect us in the community we serve from all that is evil, and strengthen our unity for the welfare of the city. I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today. Pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. Thank you. Okay. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. All proceeding accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest declarations received by the chair. I've not received any. Disclosure of political donations. Mr. Zachnich. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979 requires under section 10.4 that a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application must disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on Council's website or from the Customer Service Centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report detailing issues to be considered. The Local Government Act section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Zachnich. Apologies. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the apology of Councillor King and grant leave of absence for the meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? And we have Councillor Cameron on the screen and you're in favour as well. Thank you very much. The motion is passed. CM5, Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. Action plans. Thanks, councillors. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 2 months.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Con, did you wish to speak to that at all? Happy to move the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Councillor Cameron, are you for the motion? Thank you. Councillor Cameron on the screen is for the motion. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Confirmation of minutes to the meeting held on 25th of May 2020. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, 25th of May at 7:25 be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There being no question or debate, happy to put the motion. All those in favour? All those in favour, including Councillor Cameron on the screen, the motion is carried. Thank you. Reports from community forums. 8.1, report from the community forum held on Monday, the 4th of May 2020. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that the council receives and notes the report from the community forum held on Monday, 4 May 2020 regarding development application 10.2020.37349.1, 240 Kerr Road and 4 Shepherd Court, Thurgoona. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to that at all?
Thank you. No.
Happy to put that motion. All those in favour? All those in favour, including Councillor Cameron, The motion is carried. Thank you. We have the notice of motions. There are none. Presentation deputation. There are none. CM11 reports and minutes of committee working parties. None. Documents of sealing. CM 12.1. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move recommendation as a motion that council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of two signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant to Regulation 400 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 and the council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedure. A, Albury City Crown Lands lease to Albury City Football Club Incorporated, Jalbard Park, 5-year with a 5-year option commencing 1 July 2020, file 09/01769. And B, Albury City licence to Albury Amateur Swimming Club Incorporated, Albury Swim Centre Club Rooms commencing 29 February 2020 for 5 years, file 09/01753.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Vanderman, wish to speak to that at all?
No, thank you, Mr.
No question or debate. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? And Councillor Cameron's in favour. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.1, the COVID-19 Hardship Relief Program Guidelines. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's with pleasure I move the following recommendation and motion. The council adopts the amended COVID-19 Hardship Relief Program eligibility criteria and conditions as follows. A, applicable to the rating period from 1 April to 30 September 2020. B, applications open to all residential ratepayers unable to pay amounts due after the 6-month period ended 30 September 2020. C, evidence by way of a statutory declaration demonstrating a reduction of 30% of income in this 6-month period from April 1 to 30 September 2020 as a direct result of the COVID-19 emergency. And D, maximum financial assistance amount of 50% of total rates payable by residential ratepayers for the specified period.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, just open debate.
Briefly, Mr Mayor, I think that the councillors and staff have done a terrific job putting the COVID-19 relief stuff in place. I think we've been both timely and responsible in the measures that we've put in place around support for our community in terms of the COVID-19 emergency, keeping in mind that we need to be sustainable into the future, so we haven't gone overboard. But I think the measures that we have put in place are appropriate and measured. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. No speakers against. Speaker for, Councillor Thurley.
Just very briefly, and I echo Councillor Vanderman's sentiments, but I'd just like to acknowledge the contribution that Councillor Cameron made early in this discussion, where he raised this possibility of a relief payment to people who are unable to meet their rate payments. There have been a lot of different councils have done it in different ways, but I'm very happy to support the way we've gone about this one.
Thanks, Councillor Thurley. There are no speakers for or questions or against. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? And Councillor Cameron's in favour. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.2, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, to move the recommendation as a motion that Council A submits an application to the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program to fully fund the following projects. 1, 2, 3 and 4, Public Toilet Strategy Hobbledry Park Replacement, 225,000, National Foresters Grove Replacement, 150,000, Lake Hume Replacement, 225,000 and Thaguna Drive Bike Path, new construction, 135,000. B, submits an application to the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program to part fund the Lavington Sports Ground Footpath Project by 148,000 and that Albury City Draft 2020/21 capital budget be increased by 152,000 to fund the balance of this project, and endorses the upgrade of the Albury City's Draft 2020/21 operational plan, 4-year delivery program and long-term financial plan to reflect the above recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Very happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, just open debate on that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. There are many works that we could really have considered, and a number of them are in the report. There is always something that our community would benefit from, and there would be many people in our community who would be thinking tonight or later in the week that they know of some activities and some works that would benefit immensely from this funding. However, I am very conscious of the fact that we as a council have discussed on a number of occasions public toilet strategies, and I think this is a good outcome because it enables us to do something more quickly than we would otherwise be able to achieve. And it means also that the community will benefit most directly. And very significantly, it will enable a number of businesses and contractors within our community to benefit from the work being undertaken. And I think that's a significant factor in having these determinations put forward. So I support this very much, or most significantly tonight. And I believe that this money is being very well spent on a number of excellent projects. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Councillor Vanderman, no speakers against, speaking for.
Just to note that obviously the money is being provided under a COVID-19, if you like, a restart or community infrastructure, and I think that the money nationwide will go to fantastic projects. And from our perspective, I echo Councillor Glacken's thoughts about these projects. Are very, very much worthwhile. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There are no speakers for or against or questions. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Cameron's for. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.3, 2021 Operational Plan Draft 2020 to 2024 4-year delivery program. Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A acknowledges the submissions received during the public exhibition period. B amends the exhibited draft 2020-2021 operational plan, draft 2020 to 2024 4-year delivery program, and draft 2020 to 2030 long-term financial plan by 1, bringing forward construction of the Hawkesview Road upgrade project from year 2 from year 3. 2, bringing forward public toilet strategy priority works of 3.2 million over the 4-year delivery program. 3, including the Lavington Sports Ground footpath project in year 1. 4, recognising local roads and community infrastructure grant funding of 883,000. 5, increasing loan funding by 2.5 million to part fund public toilet strategy priority works. And 6, bringing forward detailed design of the Lavington Swim Centre upgrade of 600,000 to year 3 and associated loan funding. C amends the exhibited draft 2020-21 fees and charges schedule by reducing the street advertising A-frame fee to $0, street vending site rental to $0, and credit card surcharge to 0% at Albury City Customer Service Centres. D adopts the amended draft 2020-21 operational plan, amended draft 2020 to 2024 4-year delivery program, and amended draft 2020 to 2030 long-term financial plan. E votes the expenditure set out in the amended operational plan for the 2020-21 year. F makes each rate and charge for the 2020-2021 year in accordance with the exhibited 2020-21 statement of revenue policy. And G makes each fee and charge for the 2020-21 year in accordance with the exhibited 2020-21 schedule of fees and charges as amended.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Second is Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question, Councillor. Would you just open debate or wait for the question? Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this motion includes our budget as exhibited to the public, as well as amendments that have been recommended by the staff and one amendment of my own. And I'd like to speak to those things in order. There's obviously a huge amount of work that's gone in behind the scenes from our staff across every cluster to develop this document. And I firstly wanted to commend them on the work that's gone into this. I'm very proud that Albury City is putting out a stimulus budget at this really difficult time for our community. I think it's absolutely responsible and sensible for council to take out additional loans at very low interest to fund really wonderful projects that will benefit our community and also provide jobs at a time where the community really needs it. I think the amendments that have been recommended by staff are entirely appropriate. Some of those are in response to submissions from the community, which have been heard and listened to, and some of those are opportunistic to take advantage of federal funding and to push forward some of our own strategic priorities, such as the public toilet upgrades, which we've all just unanimously supported. The only amendment there that's my own is bringing forward the detailed design of the Lavington Swim Centre. That's something that's been long anticipated by our community, and it's there in our draft 10-year financial plan. I think it's pretty obvious to anyone that's used that facility in recent years that it's desperately in need of an update. And now that this council has decided not to proceed with an indoor facility and to retain the Lavington Swim Centre, it's really important that we bring that up to a standard that's acceptable to our community. I think parking it in the 10-year financial plan is probably too long to wait. And if we can get on with doing the detailed design of that project in this 4-year delivery program, I think that's more in line with our community's expectations for that facility. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Question from Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the most relevant member of staff. Can I be appraised of the implication of the addition of B6, bringing forward the detailed design of Lavington Swim Centre, with relevance to the 2 City 1 Community aquatic strategy? I believe there's a relationship between those two, and I'd like some explanation and background to that. But also, can I be provided with some indication as to what would we forego to enable that $600,000 to be found for the design work? Thank you.
Mr. Finlayson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. I believe there's no issue in progressing the design of the Lavington Swim Centre from a 2 Cities 1 Community project point of view, in that council has previously resolved to renew the Lavington Swim Centre. From a financial impact point of view on our 4-year delivery program, it was always intended to support such a major project with loan funding. So it's proposed that that design work be funded by loan funding that's been linked to that project in our long-term financial plan.
Okay, thank you. And can I ask a follow-up question? That being that if, for example, as time progresses and we look further at the aquatic strategy for 2 Cities 1 Community, and if we were to find in 18 months' time that there was an opportunity to progress the aquatic strategy within that 2 City 1 Community program, could we then review the possibility of reorganising the 3rd year, or within year 3, the Lavington Swim Centre upgrade, dependent upon what might fall out from the 2 Cities 1 Community initiative? In other words, if there was an opportunity to progress the aquatic strategy, would we have an opportunity as council to review the 3rd year and the Lavington Swim Centre design?
Mr. Finlayson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question. Yes, there's an opportunity for council to review its 4-year delivery program. Obviously, that's a process that we undertake annually, and so there'll be a number of opportunities to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, speaking for the motion.
Look, I am going to speak in general for the motion, although I must admit to some annoyance at this last-minute amendment being put through to the budget by Councillor Conn on the basis of we get an email, I think it's today, that this is going to go in. Now, every item in this budget has been discussed by us, by staff, over workshops, numerous sessions as far as, what are we putting in, what are we putting out? We've changed a lot because of the COVID-19 crisis. And all of a sudden, we get this particular item and brought forward tonight. We've got to vote for it without any background as to why this needs to happen right now and here. If we're bringing this forward to year 3, what's it going to do? Why can't we wait till next year and have a discussion about this particular item and bring it forward to year 2 next year? So it is particularly annoying to have this item having to be dealt with when the rest of the budget has been discussed by councillors and by staff on the basis of these are the things that we agree with. And it's a last minute item. So whilst I speak for the budget, I would like to speak for this against this particular item being included at this stage and have that item withdrawn. So I would like to move an amendment to say that this item B6 be removed from the budget discussions. If I can get a second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderin. Have we got a seconder for the removal of item 6 from the budget for an amendment, councillors? Councillor Gleichen? Happy to second it.
Happy to second that.
Councillor Vanderin, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this has happened far too many times, these sorts of issues coming up at the last minute just prior to a meeting where we have to decide on these sorts of issues when the rest of the budget has been the subject of a lot of debate, discussion, and all of a sudden this item comes up and we're asked to spend $600,000 on something in year 3. Now, I don't think that this is that important that it needs to be in this particular budget. But and I'm happy for the discussion to be had at some stage where we talk about the budget for next year around the same time as we're talking now and bring that item forward to year 2. It's going to make no difference in the end. I understand that if it goes through, but I think it's about the principle of this in having these items up for discussion, not at the last minute, just prior to a budget meeting taking place. So that's the argument I want to make as far as the amendment is concerned. The budget is terrific. It's a lot of work by a lot of people and obviously a lot of thought and discussion amongst councillors. We've got a lot of stuff in there for the COVID-19 pandemic to try and help our community get over this particular time. Even the little items here under C 1, 2 and 3 are items that are trying to help particular segments of our community in a very difficult time. So I commend the budget to you, but I would like to see, under the circumstances we find ourselves, I'd like to see that item that was included by Councillor Con removed from this budget, and the alternative motion would be the original recommendation that I would foreshadow. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderin. Speaker against, Councillor Con.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss this further. Look, it certainly wasn't a thought bubble. This council agreed by a majority in terms of what we were doing moving forward with our aquatic strategy, and that included the planned upgrades to the Lavington Swim Centre. They were included in the draft 10-year financial plan that we put out for public comment, and they were actually the subject of a public submission as well, which is the source of this amendment, Councillor Vanderin. We're making a number of amendments to the budget tonight. A number of those were recommended by staff in response to submissions from the public. For example, bringing forward the ceiling of Hawkesview Road, and as we've just seen, the inclusion of or the acceleration of the public toilet program opportunistically in response to federal funding. So we're already making changes tonight that are in response to community feedback and in consultation with our staff. I do apologise that that was provided today and not last week, but that was because I wanted to finalise the cost and which year the staff thought would be most manageable within our 4-year delivery program. And that was the reason that this wasn't provided on Wednesday or Thursday last week. I think that it's important that this community project that we've all agreed to do, that we had agreed to do in a later date, be brought forward. As Mr. Finlayson's outlined, that project would have been funded by loans, whether it was done in the future or done now. We're not magicking $600,000 to spend on this. It's obviously a very good time at the moment for the council to be borrowing with exceptionally low interest rates. I think this is a minor change in the grand scheme of the budget. It's one that has been discussed that we're all aware that the community needs, that was already in the documentation. It's just a change of year. And I would commend it to councillor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Con. Councillor Glacken speaking for the amendment.
Thank you. Yes, I do speak for this amendment, and for a number of reasons. Firstly, it is not a surprise that we want to, or some of us want to, include the Lavington pool and its upgrades in this. It is in part of our 10-year plan, so it's logical that we as a council do support it. The reality is we can't continue to bring things forward without the realistic appreciation that other things will then be impacted. That is the ultimate reality. And a number of months ago, we were in this chamber, so before the COVID, we were in this chamber and discussed that if councillors wanted to add things for the budget, that we would specifically move those as an amendment and not the reverse, that we have them as the original, put them in the motion, and then by default have to remove them by amendment. It was discussed a number of times and at great length to ensure that we as councillors understood, appreciated, had the background information, had the opportunity to discuss all of these items that would be included in our budget a number of times. And to come today and find that there is an additional item placed in our budget by a councillor who is moving the motion is a little frustrating. In fact, it's very frustrating because the budget is made up of hundreds of line items. And knowing that we had discussed this, because it has come up a number of times before, as in the process of adding things to the budget, knowing that we had discussed this, it is most frustrating. Everyone, or our council, does support the Lavington pool, but simply inserting that in line 3 at this stage is not an appropriate way to achieve that, especially noting that we have only just managed to get over a significant speed hump with the 2 cities, 1 community, that being support by both state governments and the federal government. And I believe that we should leave the funding for the design work where it is, not bring it forward, and ensure that we have an appropriate approach to what may be a realistic opportunity with the aquatic strategy between the 2 cities, 1 community program. So I support the budget in its entirety, as we have discussed as councillors over a number of meetings and over a number of months. And I thank the staff for the significant work that they have undertaken to bring this budget forward, especially as has been noted by Councillor Van der Ven, the significant issues that the council have been dealing with whilst bringing the budget to this point. And I support the concept of the design work for the Lavington swimming pool at some stage, but not bringing it forward into year 3. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. Speaker against, Councillor Thurley.
Yes, I speak against the amendment. The budget is something 100 million plus. This money is in there, maybe not in the next 2 to 3 years, but it's there. Councillor Van der Ven, even in his remarks, said it's not all that important. I don't believe it's at all important. It's something that the community expects us to do. Yes, we've debated budget items time after time in workshops and other sessions. However, it all went out on public display and we had feedback from the community. And this is one element of that feedback, that they wanted certain things to happen. In a budget of over $100 million, this is neither here nor there. And so I can't vote for this amended motion.
Thank you. Speaker for the amendment, Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel that I'm going to be in the minority, but I'm going to have my say. I support the words and the proposal put forward by Councillor Van der Ven and supported by Councillor Glacken. I remember this time 12 months ago, we were again on ambushed on budget night by a last minute inclusion into the budget. This has happened again. But generally, I don't have a problem with the proposal at all. I've always supported an aquatic centre in Albury. Once that decision is taken, I'm more than happy to look towards the Lavington Swim Centre. But to throw it in tonight, while people can dismiss it and say, look, there's plenty of money there and it's only year 3, it's fine. It's the principle again. We sat down for over 6 months and discussed the build-up of the budget to tonight. And all of a sudden, at the last minute, we've been ambushed again. So therefore, I find that I cannot and will now support the amendment, but will support the total budget because that is a responsible, sound and safe budget for our community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Doxey. Speaking against the amendment, Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So councillors Glacken, Van der Ven and Doxey feel frustrated. They feel annoyed. They feel frustrated, ambushed. Goodness gracious me, I feel very sorry for them. Look, we're not just Albury City. We're Lavington, Tabletop, Thurgoona, Willinga, Splitters Creek. And Lavington, in my view, tends to miss out on a lot of things. They get left behind. I think that this swim centre is in sore need of a redesign and an upgrade. It's part of our swimming future. It's part of our future plans. And as stated by Councillor Thurley, $600,000 is a tiny fraction of the total budget, and it was going to be in the budget anyway at some point. So let's not be small-minded about this, my fellow councillors. Let's just get on and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. No more speakers for, but I have a speaker against. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the budget process, but budgets are always subject to a final tuning. Otherwise, we wouldn't put them out for public comment, and the Act wouldn't require us to put them out for public comment. We've done some changes tonight already. We've accepted some changes around Hawkesview Road, which is right in my view, or we will. And I'm not confronted by the prospect of altering the draft budget. That's why it's called a draft budget. It's important, I think, to get a clear picture and, more importantly, send a clear picture to the community of Albury and Wodonga by extension that we are not going to close the Lavington pool, that we're going to refurbish the Lavington pool. We saw what was, in my view, a dastardly plan to shut the Lavington pool and build a chlorinated Palace of Versailles at the Lauren Jackson Centre to cater for the, predominantly in my view, for the privileged few in our city at the expense of the majority of those families in North Albury and Lavington who rely on the Lavington pool. I have made it very clear over 2 terms that I am fanatical about keeping the Lavington pool open, and I'm not confronted by whatever mechanism I have to employ or support to get the funding in train for that refurbishment. I'll be rejecting the amendment and supporting the motion as proposed by Councillor Con.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Just a question from the chair for Mr. Finlayson. There's been mentioned a couple of times about impact on budget, and it's my understanding from your response before that there would be no impact on the budget if this item was put in year 3. Could you confirm that for me, please, Mr. Finlayson?
Yeah, correct, Mr. Mayor. So the design cost would be offset by the drawdown of loan funds.
So there'd be no other projects or programs that would go without?
Correct. There is no need to defer other projects to offset the cost of these design works.
Thank you. Councillor Van der Ven, just to close debate for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This amendment, or my amendment to this, wasn't about the fact that I didn't support the $600,000 for the design of the aquatic centre. This is about an issue where we've had a discussion about all of the changes that have come up tonight on the budget, except for the amendment that Councillor Con has put forward tonight about bringing that funding forward to year 3. And as I said in my opening remarks, I don't have an issue with putting the $600,000 forward for the design for the Lavington swim pool upgrade. But my issue is around the fact that we, and as Councillor Glacken pointed out, had a discussion about putting stuff forward into the budget with sufficient notice. We've had a discussion about all of the changes that have been proposed in the budget in item B, except for the one that Councillor Connors brought forward. And my argument is we should put that aside and deal with it next year when we can bring it forward in next year's budget to year 2. So all I'm arguing about is not about putting the funding forward for this particular project. It is about the process, about bringing this to tonight's meeting with a few hours notice when we discussed every other change that we've made to the budget properly and through due process. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. On that note, I'll put the amendment. Those for the amendment? Those against? The amendment is lost. Councillor Con, did you wish to close debate on your motion? Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, it really saddens me that 3 councillors tonight have said that they support a positive change to the budget for our community, but then wouldn't because of the process that was followed. Doing our job and responding to feedback from the community and debating that in an open public forum is hardly an ambush. We received public comment that the North Albury Swim Centre upgrades should happen sooner rather than later, and it's entirely appropriate for us to debate that in public and make amendments to the budget. And I'm deeply saddened that people would prefer those discussions only happen behind closed doors, or that we not make changes to the budget or the draft budget that we put out on exhibition. I think that the process that has been followed is entirely appropriate and part of our job as elected representatives to do that tonight in public and in response to feedback from the community. That issue aside, I hope that we can now unanimously support what's really a fantastic budget that's really going to provide a lot of benefit to our community over the next 4 years. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Con. I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour, including Councillor Cameron, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, councillors. We're up to item 13.4, the Investment Policy and Procedure Review. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council A endorses the draft revised investment policy and procedure as presented to Council. B, places the draft revised investment policy and procedure on public exhibition for a period of 28 days. And C, if no submissions are received, that the draft revised investment policy and procedure be adopted and placed in the public policy and procedure register.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to that at all?
A routine matter, and basically there are almost no changes to the policy, so I'm happy to let it go.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Councillor Cameron voting for the motion. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.5, the development application. Councillor Cameron, 447 Reid Avenue. No, Councillor Cameron, you don't wish to move that? No, okay. Your green card's still up, that's all. Okay, thank you. We need another mover. Thanks, councillors. A mover, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Council receives and notes the contents of this report and grants development consent to development application 10.2019.37016.1, proposing the demolition of the existing building, construction of 4 residences and 5 lot community title subdivision of lot 47 DP 23289, known as 447 Reid Avenue, Lavington, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included as attachment to this report, attachment 5 to this report.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, just open debate on the item, thanks.
Look, there have been a number of objections to this development. That's why it came to council. However, I note that many of those were form objections, not individual. Some of the matters raised were important, but I believe they were addressed properly here tonight by the planner for the developer and in questions to Mr. Christie and our planning staff. The biggest change that was made to the development as originally proposed was to turn the first unit round and give it a proper streetscape. I would not have supported it in its original context because it presented a blank wall basically to the street. But over and above that, this is a large lot. We know that the existing building there is old. Well, mostly it's gone. We need to look at higher density development in many parts of this city, and this is one of them. One objection was that we don't need any more units. This is not a planning matter. This is a matter for the developer. If he wants to take the risk and build something and it doesn't sell, that's his problem, not mine. I believe these are single bedroom developments, and I believe that there's probably some market for that. Most of our other developments are for multi-bedroom developments, and I think this is a positive. I don't believe there will be any of the issues such as social matters that were raised in some of the submissions. Properly done, well landscaped, I think it will be an improvement to the area.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. I have a question from Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. In the course of the communications with the objectors, they indicated to me that there were some concerns about the removal of asbestos from the site. And that even when a properly certified asbestos handler was engaged on the site, they believed that the issues weren't properly addressed and that there was some danger to the community from asbestos dust not being properly handled. Are council staff aware of the allegations, one about the original removal of debris from the site, and two, that there's also allegations of the properly authorised asbestos handler not doing what they considered to be the job properly either?
Mr. Christie.
Yep. Thank you for the question and for you, Mr. Mayor. I guess in regards to two parts, yes, we were aware of the unauthorised works. Council became aware from contact from the adjoining residents, hence why we became immediately involved rather than just related to the application on that particular matter. Council staff, again, I guess in some ways this goes to Councillor Cameron's question earlier on to the builder. In regards to council staff, believed that the builder should have been aware that there was likely to be asbestos, and so council staff took appropriate action in that matter and issued a penalty infringement notice for the works without consent. In regards to the works then continuing by a licensed asbestos removal agent, we're not aware that those works weren't undertaken in accordance to the requirements, and we've got no evidence to the contrary.
Okay. Can I just have a follow-up, Mr. Mayor, please?
Yes.
Through to possibly Mr. Christie. So one of the concerns for me that was raised by the objectors was that they called the council staff to let them know that there was some unauthorised work happening, and they were concerned about asbestos being on site and being removed in an unauthorised fashion. And when council staff arrived and told them to cease work, they stopped work, and 10 minutes after the council staff left, they started work again. And this happened on a couple of occasions on the same day, I believe. So where does the responsibility lie in terms of, I believe that safe work were called at one stage. Who sort of monitors safe work to make sure that the whole process is properly undertaken? Because as you can see from my questions, the concern for me is that it appears that the original person being told to cease work only ceased work while the council staff were there, and as soon as the council staff left, they continued working again. How do we make sure that those issues don't happen with people that are totally unscrupulous in terms of the way that we have to deal with asbestos.
Mr. Christie?
And thank you for the question, for Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I can't comment on the allegations. I said, as far as I'm aware, our staff attended the site and they complied with the instructions to the best of our knowledge and ceased work. An appropriately licensed asbestos removal agent was then involved and undertook the works accordingly. That's probably the only comment I can provide in regards to that. The actual regulation of the asbestos removal agent, their licensing is not through council. So if there are any particular concerns there, it's probably best taken up with the party that licensed those, which I believe would be Department of Fair Trading, but I have to take on notice the precise licensing agency.
Yeah. Is there some way that we can perhaps follow this up and ask the questions of the agencies that license these people to find out how we continue to ensure that they're doing the work properly, because it is concerned to the objectors, and I understand that they live next door to the property in question, but they're concerned for their future health as well if their asbestos isn't being dealt with properly.
Yes, sounds good, Mr. Christie.
Again, thank you for more question for you, Mr. Mayor. I can pass it on to our education and compliance team who conducted the investigation and generally liaise with Safe Work New South Wales and the appropriate authorities and get them to request that they further investigate and have those discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Thurley.
My question is to Mr. Christie as well. What is the state of the demolition of the property?
And thank you for the question for you, Mr. Mayor. As far as we're aware, the demolition has ceased in accordance with the stop work order once the asbestos was removed in accordance with the requirements of the stop work order.
So, Mr. Christie, just to further that question, in relation to the penalty notice that was issued by our staff, was that issued for works without an appropriate DA, or was it issued, I would have assumed Fair Trading would issue any orders against the asbestos removal? Is that the way it works?
Again, and thank you for the question for you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we issued a PIN for non-compliance for unauthorised work without development consent. So I don't know if Department of Fair Trading have undertaken any investigation in regards to the asbestos complaint.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Is it possible for us to find out whether any action was taken over the original removal of the asbestos?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christie. Okay, any other questions or debate? Councillor Cameron, you speak against the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll just be brief. I don't feel I can support this development application. There are too many variations with the DCP for me to feel comfortable with it. It is a constant source of debate in this council, the degree to which we should permit deviations from the DCP. I'm not comfortable with this development at all.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Thurley, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, happy to put the motion by division. Those for the motion, Councillor Dutchby, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Blacken, Councillor Thurley. Those against, Councillor Van der Ven and Councillor Cameron. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.6, the Albury Entertainment Centre Convention Wing redevelopment. Councillor Blacken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to move the recommendation that council accepts the tender from Peddlethorpe Melbourne Proprietary Limited for contract number 20/01334 Albury Entertainment Centre Convention Wing redevelopment for the lump sum amount of $389,012.25, including GST. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken, do you wish to open debate?
Thank you. Indeed. The entertainment centre and that area of the QE2 precinct is of regional significance in as much as it is a regional facility. We are most blessed to have a significant number of events and functions come to that facility because of our location in the region and because of the population of our region, which is of immense benefit to our regional community as well as our Albury and Wodonga citizens as well. It is important that we ensure that that facility is maintained, but also grows and develops over time to ensure the continuing demand for the provision of those facilities that are housed in that precinct remain as we need them to be to grow and develop with the community. This area has been discussed by us for a number of years, and it has been a number of years, in fact, a number of turns of a number of councils to bring it to this stage. I note the people or the companies who have tendered for this work are significant in this field and this field of structural development. And I'm pleased that we're able to agree, we will be able tonight to agree a contract, and I believe that should be Peddlethorpe from Melbourne. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. There being no speakers for or against, Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to close debate?
No, thank you very much.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Cameron's in favour. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. 13.7, the draft local strategic planning statement. Councillors, thank you. Councillor Vanderman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move the recommendation of the motion that Council A receives and endorses the draft local strategic planning statement shaping our city, our land use vision. B, places the draft local, I'm having trouble with, I might have to find it on here. I'm having trouble with the, I'll turn around if I can do that. Places the draft local strategic planning statement shaping our city, our land use vision on public exhibition for a minimum of 28 days. And if no submissions are received through the public exhibition process, then the draft local strategic planning statement shaping our city, our land use vision, be adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that motion?
No, we had a briefing on this last week, but it is a part of our total planning system within our council. It's a document that we need to have, and it does especially shape the future for us in terms of what development in our city looks like.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. There being no further speakers for or against, I'm happy to put the motion as a division. All those in favour? Councillor Starchby, Councillor Doxey, Councillor Mack, Councillor Con, Councillor Gluckin, Councillor Thurley, Councillor Vanderman, Councillor Cameron. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Officers' reports for noting. I have 14.1 monthly development statistics, May 2020. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council receives and notes the information in the monthly development statistics report for May 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin.
Happy to second.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. Fairly routine matter.
Thank you. Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Councillor Cameron's voting for. Okay. Investment balances 2020. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of May 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you. No.
There being no question or debate, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Investment balances we've just done. 14.3, the New South Wales Auditor General's Report on Local Government 2019. Councillor Vanderman.
I'll move that the council receives and notes the New South Wales Auditor General's report on local government 2019.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderman, do you wish to speak to that?
Very briefly, noting that this report has been before our local ARIC committee, and there was only moderate risks identified, and I think that really shows up our staff and also our audit risk and committee for the job that they're doing. They're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vandervan. There being no further speakers for or against or questions? Just one thing to note in the report from the chair is that it was identified that 18 councils are still in jeopardy of not being able to pay wages beyond 6 months or 3 to 6 months, which is of concern given we've just gone through stage 1 of mergers and acquisitions, and it appears that 18 are still very unhealthy. So, you know, I'm happy to see the result for Albury and all of the Ramsay councils, but I'm just a little bit concerned that we still haven't got our other cousins across the line. But Councillor Vanderman, just to close debate.
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Councillor Cameron's for. The motion is carried. Albury Wodonga Visitor Economy Trends 2019. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives and notes the 2019 Albury Wodonga Visitor Economy Trends Report.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Glacken, to speak to that.
Yes, thank you. It's a fantastic report because it reveals some absolutely amazing statistics. The growth and development was just wonderful. Regretfully, that I note that regretfully, that may not be necessarily the case when we're looking at this review in 12 months' time. However, it's great to see that the compounding increase year on year that has been enabled up until now. And that does indicate to me that whilst we will have a difficult period continuing in the medium term, it means very much that the longer term looks good for our city and our region, and that relationship that we have with our region and the organisations with which we work on a very regular basis to bring these very positive numbers forward. So thank you for the staff for the report and their ongoing efforts to ensure that we do have a regional impact on the visitor economy, and that we continue to offer services and facilities that work with the partners that we have, including the businesses and the community groups within our own local government area, but also our surrounding local government areas as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. There being no further speakers for or against, I'm happy to put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Cameron's for. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. There are no delegates' reports for noting. Urgent business. I have Councillor Glacken with a presentation. Thank you, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you. This is from the Albury Northside Chambers of Commerce. We are a sponsor of the Chambers, and they gave us this plaque just before the COVID situation arose. And so I haven't been able to bring it to a meeting before. So I'd like to, with a distance of 1.5 metres, present this to you.
That's a lot.
On behalf of the Chamber. And might I note that the Chambers have been really active in the COVID period. And I heard one person in our community, one small business owner, who said that she had received a notification that the Chambers was offering a trial period, 3-month trial period for free with the Chambers. And she said, and if you'll excuse the language, bugger that, I'm going to join. She joined outright rather than have that free trial period because of the significant work that they had undertaken, and it assisted her business and no doubt many others as well. So with the 1.5 distance, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so there are no items of urgent business. I might finish that item on the context of we have a new grandchild, first grandchild for Councillor Suchman, his wife Jenny. Congratulations. Good positive note. There are no confidential matters. The meeting is complete at 7:22. Thank you, councillors.